When we are preparing an event, we used to make speeches, logic speeches. Maybe in this event, we are not organizing it like this because in our mind or organization, we talk first about farming and then about trading. But we needed to do it like this because of the responsibilities of some of our opponents. So now we are going to talk about landscape, agriculture, improving biodiversity, soil resilience, water resilience through regenerative agriculture. So I am going to ask, they are going to answer. So I'm going to introduce Ernesto Igartuarregui. He's a biologist. He's a researcher specialist in cereal here at the CSIC, in one of those centers that we have talked about this morning. Ernesto is coordinating the sub-area of agricultural science and technologies at the CSIC. So one of the things that I like the most about the profile, about your profile, is that you believe in critical masses and synergies in order to achieve ambitious goals. So you can tell us later about these critical masses. So thank you very much for being with us. Monica Andres, she's an agronomist and master in business. She has been the major part of her career at Yara, a company where they do fertilizers, and they also do soil fooding. And she's executive vice president in Europe. Robert Ringwick, that loves agriculture. He has developed his career at Syngenta. He has been more than 3 decades there, and she is nowadays responsible for business sustainability. Thank you for being with us. Ana Reginfo, she's also a biologist, as Ernesto. She has dedicated her career in forestry and environmental companies. During the pandemic, she thought that she needed to do something and take profit of that time. So she created a project called Islas de Corcho Natural. It is an example to promote rural development where she lives in the north of Extremadura. Thank you for being with us. And last but not least, Alfonso Chico de Guzmán. He's one of the first persons applying the regenerative agriculture in Spain at his farm in Murcia, La Junquera. He has a webpage. He was surprised for us visiting his webpage. And he created an academic destination interested in regenerative agriculture, Regeneration Academy. So thanks for joining us. I'm sure we will learn a lot from you. So in this panel, we are going to talk about biodiversity and water resilience. Maybe the first thing to talk about when we were talking about organization and this panel, I thought maybe the first question should be, what is regenerative agriculture? Maybe each one we think about a different thing. Let's take a look on the points where we have the same thinking. So please, Ernesto.
Vale, pues gracias por la pregunta.
Thanks for the question. I'm glad to be here today. So regenerative agriculture could be defined as an agriculture that not only thinks about production, but also has the goal to improve the environment. This is easy to say, but difficult to do. So we can also think that many of us have in mind a kind of agriculture that is integrated in the environment and not against environment. So for me, as a biologist, this is something that I like a lot, because for the biologist, everything is in ecosystems. So we need to attend to all the factors of this system in order to be sustainable. I also loved the previous interventions because I thought that I had to convince people of some approaches, but maybe you are more convinced than me. I think there is a meeting of people with an approach very similar about many things that we are talking about today. Agriculture is necessary, and also livestock, but we are all aware that the problems that agriculture made, for example, degradation of soil, pollution due to an excess of fertilizers, abuse in the use of water, and also degradation of rural life, loss of incomes for the farmers. There are many factors that we need to solve regarding agriculture and food production, but this holistic approach regarding all the factors of the ecosystem and all the stakeholders is the one to be taken into account. So at the FESIC, during the last months, but I've been many years at this council, I have known a lot of researchers that have been many years working in regenerative agriculture without knowing, because this is a label very useful in order to make effort and address these efforts. But the researchers have been working on this and how to preserve the soil, how to improve the soil in order for the plants to interchange water and nutrients, the use of water, so many things that are all applicable to the things that we have heard today. And one thing that I would like to say, and I think I've already heard it today, in agriculture and in livestock, research needs to be near to the ground. Gabriel has said they should invent it. This is not judicious in farming. We need to do a research near to the ground. No one is going to help us. The rest of Europe is not going to help us on our specific characteristics. So research has a lot to offer on that field. Okay, you have talked about too many issues as in the first intervention. So we need to come back to my first question about regenerative agriculture. So from Yara and Syngenta, how would you define this type of agriculture? Which points would you use for defining this agriculture? Well, it is a very vague word. We see it as something that provides solutions in order to achieve the transformation of agriculture and food system in order to favorize the positive transition for nature. So the positive transition for nature can be understood as not having a harmful impact by reducing those factors that could improve it. So from the point of view of my company, is including the nature in each one of the decisions that we are taking, and for them to make an impact that gives more value. That can be very vague, but from the European Union, it is not understood as something so restricted. Ecological agriculture is more flexible because it includes and is adapted to the use of new technologies and the use of the agricultural inputs for the farming. And there are challenges for this. Who is going to support this transition, and which are the risks for this transition? So we see the first part of this change with who is the farmer, with all the challenges in front of him. So how to apply these new practices in these regenerative crops. And he cannot do it alone. We see it as it needs to be through the whole food chain, because this is not going to cure at such a rapid speed. Okay, I will ask later. So Robert, if we can concrete a bit more what is regenerative agriculture. So good morning. I agree with both. This is an evolution of the agriculture that is already practiced in Spain from a long time ago. So its approach is in the soil health, the biodiversity protection, and a better use of the natural resources, and also for the applied resources in order to be more efficient, and with the goal of protecting the production of the soil on the long term, protecting the soil of the lands on the long term, and also the profitability for the farmers. This is not. This includes innovation, not only practices of soil movements, crops that cover the soil, including livestock, but also application techniques for accuracy. If we are talking about fertilizers, nutrients, to do a better use of these, wherever it is necessary, including also the sustainability of the soil in order to know what is inside. We can apply it in all type of farms. It is not only for preservation of the organic world. Every farmer can apply these kind of practices, but we need to encourage the farmers in order to do this in a reliable way, because it is a faith. and it has a long history from the past that they have already lived in agriculture. So we need to more. We need to help them with advice and also with practical support and financial support, and give them the tools with seeds, nutrients, fertilizers, etc., in order for them to do that. So we are going to begin with the technical parts. I mean, the farmers that are applying this regenerative agriculture. So what would you like to add? So thank you. Well, what could we add? Well, a lot. But I also miss the agricultural extension agents that helped some time ago the farmers. Yeah, I'm talking about another issue. There are many projects, many strategies that have been in Europe, a lot of time being developed. Science is at the hand of everyone. So, for example, in Extremadura, we have applied on life. I have here a Portuguese partner. We have applied very simple things like doing densification in strategic areas where we know there's water with adequate species. For example, we have species that can fix CO2, but can also feed from trees that were done before. It is very important in the regenerative agriculture. They are doing practices that we were doing in the past. We haven't invented anything, but we need to be explained why we should do those things. And there's something that was said at my house. Experiments shouldn't be done if they are not harmful, and shouldn't be done without knowing the consequences. For the vegetal soil, Spain needs to recover the soil. We are victims of machinery efficiency for not knowing. We did labor with machinery, and we devastated the land through the water.
We've been accumulating water, something that our ancestors already did. We have tools at our reach. Landowners, farmers, stock farmers have these tools available. Stock farming management cannot take place with the animals not having the appropriate conditions. Organic materials have to be incorporated to the soil. So there are many elements that are not known. Need to raise awareness about their existence so that everybody can practice regenerative agriculture. Alfonso, how do you practice regenerative agriculture on your land? How do you work on that? Well, our definition of regenerative agriculture, since there is no official definition, is such that we believe through certain actions we should improve the water and the biodiversity. The practices are very different, so there are very different ways of doing it. It's different to do that in Murcia or in Cantabria in the north of Spain. And we try for all the crops to have at least 4 returns. The economic return, which is essential, the environmental return through regenerative agriculture, restoration of ecosystems, reforestation, also performed on the land, social return as well, trying to repopulate the area. It is a very depopulated area in the rural area of Spain, trying for jobs to have good conditions and also an inspirational return. We try to make it appealing to people so people come and wish to copy that. So I hope this type of return can also be present. So how does this apply to our context? It is a land, a dry irrigation land in the Murcia region, bordering Almeria and Granada. Very dry, about 600 liters per square meter. But this year, in May, we estimated the rainfall in the previous months, and it was 82 liters. So we try to adapt our techniques to that. We have created around 100 ponds, biodiversity hedges with trees, bushes, aromatic plants, 2-3 meters width. We have about 15 kilometers of those. And we've closed an agreement with a company by selling the carbon credits of those hedges, they finance a plan. If everything goes right, we want to build further 15 kilometers of hedges next year, and then vegetable covers. Crop diversification. We used to also only have 2 varieties of cereals, and we have many more varieties now. Aromatic plants, etc. So we try to have a great deal of perennial crops because cereal this year is fully dry. The rains, the new rains have not saved the crops, but we have a big harvest of aromatic plants. After a period of drought, they've received water in time. So we try to comply with everything, applying compost to improve the soil. We create ditches adapted to the level curves, bends about 4 meters width and 1 meter depth. And when it rains, it needs to fill up to the top. We combine them with some ponds at some weak points, and those were also full, but they seem to be operating better. They did not have water when we took the photographs because they had infiltrated everything, which is not good for the photos, but it is good for the result. So we can combine that with hedges as well, and you can complicate your life as much as you want after that. A drought is the main topic of the sector in the EU. And I would like to ask Monica and Robert, droughts are a problem in the Spanish soils and in our weather, in our climate. Can regenerative processes help palliate this drought that is so obvious so visible in Spain, has been for decades? So how can regenerative farming help? Well, it will not force more rain to come, but last year's drought was very bad. This year there have been serious losses throughout Spain. However, the harm has been increased, or is increased, if we just put all the eggs in one basket. Alfonso's example about his land is his plot. It used to be cereal and barbecho. It was a disaster last year, but this year they've had an almond crop, which has kind of made up for the losses. They have one plot in fallow. So there are techniques like intercropping, association or joint crops, favoring of regeneration of soil, weeds, avoidance of weeds. But all of these techniques have the soil as the common element. The soil is suffering from erosion, and with a better understanding of a healthy soil, with a better dialogue between the plants and the soil, because the soil is not just a physical support. The more we analyze, we study the soil, the more we marvel at how much there is in the soil. So with regenerative agriculture, with this improvement in the soil, with this diversification of the crops, of the plots of land, we can tackle so terrible situations as this year's. I was also thinking about our interface with the plant, which is the soil. Soil stores the water, and this is where the nutrients are dissolved that plants really eat or drink from. So the healthier the soil, I want to repeat what Ernesto said, I fully agree with what he said, the better the operation of the soil, since it is the transmitting means or element, the healthier the plants will be, and then the more resistant they will be to the droughts. Farmers are the first elements to be impacted by the climate change, and we need to take this into account. They really suffer from the scarcity of water or the overflowings, the terrible changes of temperature that we've experienced in spring in Spain this year. So they are the first elements to be interested in helping mitigate this climate change. So this may also be done by favoring the storage of carbon in the soil. And this can also be made possible with a healthy soil, allowing for this storing or storage, allowing also for the free development of the plants. And of course, by means of biostimulants as well, favoring this infrastructure, this biodiversity that has to do with regenerative agriculture. We will go back to these topics later. You both, Monica and Roberto, about tools for farmers. And Narejinfo talked about the agricultural extension or expansion that is not in existence anymore. But from the companies, what are the tools that you are foreseeing to offer farmers for this new handling of the land? Well, our main objective in Yara is helping farmers to make decisions. They have to make so many decisions throughout the year. They have to handle so many data that the idea is to make things easier by means of the technology. Just to give some examples, one possibility might be by the management of nutrients. AgFarm is a digital tool that uses satellite images and may recommend farmers and speak directly to tractors and recommend the amount of nutrients, saying what is needed here and there. And it also regulates the performance of the crops. So farmers have savings, and I want to point this out in every question, because when we talk about performance, we are talking about the economic performance of farmers. And if they can reduce the amount of tools, profiting from digital tools, then this is going to be very beneficial. There are digital tools for trying to find greater efficiency in the use of water, and in the sector of irrigation here. And it also has to do with quality elements. So the idea is to be more efficient, not to use more tools. Robert from Syngenta, what tools can you give farmers to help them in this new handling? Let me go back to the previous question. The soil contains an amazing amount of life. It's the microbiome. It's a microbiome. So this is as far as my scientific knowledge goes. But in just a spoonful of soil contains more life than all the population in the planet. The millions of bacteria are the food to other elements that live in that soil as well. So if water is preserved in the soil, there will be life for all that amazing microbiome full of microorganisms. So land is hard as cement in the summer. And with regenerative farming, well, there may be a limit after 2 years of drought, but by laying a crop on top of the soil for 1 year, you can preserve the humidity in the soil. So when the rain eventually comes, the rain can leak through and the soil will not be displaced, will not move when it rains. It will not cook when it's hot either. And there is no humidity. So the role is essential in protecting this life. In terms of tools, yes, indeed, coverage crops. There are different mixtures of seeds that are applied to different regions, from Cantabria to Murcia and Extremadura, wherever, that can be used depending of where they are and depending on the conditions of each plot, because they are different. But technology can also be applied. And in Syngenta, for example, I want to sell you my product here. In Syngenta, we have a technology called InterraScan, which is a machine that scans what is in the soil with 27 parameters. It measures the micronutrients, the CO2, the carbon, the organic matter, so that farmers can know what is inside. And that is how we can design an application program or a fertilizer program or a seed program or phytosanitary program adapted to the needs of every square meter of the plot. And this can be optimized. The use of resources can be optimized. It can be regulated by farmers. We have a case of a farmer who saved €85 per hectare on fodder and phytosanitary products, which represent €25,000 in his plots. So in the current conditions, with the impact of the drought, decreasing the productivity of the plot, this means a lot of money. So we do have things, we have to do more because we must translate these data into practical advice for each plot, for each person. But yes, we can. Another theme for Alfonso. What tools do you use and what tools do you ask for? I was thinking, what do they use and what do they need to work? Well, one of the tools that we've used for biodiversity in some ponds are the natural rubber islands. In addition to these movements of land, of soil, to build the ponds, etc., we apply compost. We do it ourselves in part. We buy part of it. We do a soil analysis every year. So this machine would be wonderful because every analysis costs us €100. So we can do the scanning. That would be perfect. To monitor all that. And in our case, the academy holds students doing their master's dissertations. So we have 18 students every year, and they investigate all these things, how this technique affects the soil, the biodiversity, the water, and this is wonderful because to us it is almost like an R&D department. It is like a symbiosis. The students do their research, and then we apply the results. And then they, in cooperation with their university, they also use more tools for soil, water analysis, etc. So this would be the summary. Let me add to this. I agree with Robert. Water is very important, water in the soil, but the structure of the soil is more important. In plants, no matter how much water they have, if there are no nutrients, not a good structure of the soil, they don't absorb the water the same. Pollination is very important. People only think about pollination from bees, honey-producing bees, but these bees are 20%. Of the bees. The remaining 80% are lonely pollinizers. They inject the pollen and the nectar in the soil, and they activate the cycle of millions of microorganisms in the microbiome that Robert explained. Elo is very much engaged in this. The pollination as a tool to structure the soil is very important, not just thinking about honey. And then there are all the techniques that Alfonso mentioned. We have a great deal of trees in our land. We've used a technique used by olive trees plots in the south, far from the roots, with a shallow ripper. We've created a ditch. And erosion has changed profoundly. The improvement in pasture, in seeds, has also played a role. So everything has been really, really useful. We had an area that was very dry, very arid, with a great deal, about 500 kilo dry matter every year. And we do it in a holistic way because the design was for biodiversity, not just for the cattle, but with electrical shepherds that can be opened because hunting, stock farming, rubber, all these are very important. We don't want to place any limitations on the fields. An example of natural pollinizers, an example of one of our tools. We had a curious case of a student, a Dutch marine biologist. He came to La Junquera and performed a study of the ponds and life in the ponds. And his outcome was that big ponds maintaining water all year through have many natural pollinizers needing that water. And then the almond trees, some hundreds of meters away from the pond, had more fertilization. There were more almonds, really. So this affected the production. So something that we never thought about when we did it. So this is a combination, because of a combination of things, of factors. We've also placed many nest boxes for birds and for bats. Bats have an amazing night insectivore insect-eating power. And we need to find tools that have power at everyone's reach. I've placed lots of nest boxes, and the population of the area has noticed that in the biodiversity, there are different birds now. Alfonso, can I ask you about the performance in your plot? You have transformed the La Junquera plot. But as for performance, what has the result been? Because we are explaining different practices, but we need to make ends meet. Yes, everything's good in our case. Everything is ecological. But is it because of having an added value in the ecological aspect? Well, maybe at the beginning, when we started the transition, about 12 years ago, there was some subsidy for ecological cereal, so we started the transition. But thanks to that, we saw that there is a market, and then we learned to work, because the first years of the transition were complicated and there was a drop in the production. And now we have a production that we will need to look case by case, of course, but it is not less than that of the neighbors. Some farmers produce more, some produce less. We're not the ones that produce most, because there are tools that have very fast results. Some products cannot be used for being so ecological, and we don't use them. There are some farmers in conventional agriculture that produce a bit more. But this year, I think we've equaled them. I think our almond trees, are the best ones of the area. But you're not giving me any figures. By hectare, we are more or less on the average of our area, which is quite low in dry farming. For almonds, it's like 800 kilo of almonds per hectare. Aromatic plants, about 30 kilo essential oils per hectare, more or less, so average. For example, this year will be 0, or for almond it will be more, and for essential oil it'll be more as well. Can I also intervene? Yeah, the performance question was clarified by him. Well, dwelling on that, I can say that any regenerative agriculture seems to be very pretty, wonderful, everything's fine. We said that maybe some measures can be applied in one place, some other measures can be applied in a different place, and the production of food in farming and stock farming will be a mix of many different things. And for regenerative farming, it doesn't have to be opposed to sustainable identification. The labels are placed by people, but we need to produce in line with the ecosystem, because we only have one planet and one ecosystem, and we have to use them in favor of our production. We have to be aware of the fact that we have to preserve the ecosystem. But having said this, we need to be careful with supporting too many strategies that may reduce your performance. All these practices are fine if you can maintain an economic sustainability of producers. You said, we mentioned the population of the planet that has to be fed. Economic growth is very much discussed today. It has pros and cons, but when it comes to producing food, we have to be careful with that. And we need to try to maintain the production of food, of course, improving all these systems that have been explained. Thank you very much for your note, and since it is based on science from the SIC.
I would like to introduce another topic. We have not much time because I would like to let you do some questions, but I'm going to introduce a topic about the CO2 agriculture, CO2 credits. So these creation of CO2 credits and pay to the farmers, could it be an profitable solution for the farmers in order to encourage the ecological agriculture, as you said, regarding the allowances? I don't know if maybe with this business area, could it be an encouragement? I would like to begin. Well, regarding carbon, European policies is not fair for Spain. We have many trees. They have only, this legislation is only about forestation. It is not seen about what have been already done. And also they are looking at fires. And this is becoming a business, and this is very dangerous. We need to award what is well done. For example, the forestry helps to fix more carbon. For example, they need to be recognized, the deposits of carbon, and it's from there that comes the regenerative agriculture at the soil. With the humid soils, the livestock management, and of course this is going to be an income source for the countryside, because now they have a very low income, and this is linked with the lack of population. We cannot maintain the countryside only by some of us, because it costs so much. They legislate at the offices, but we do the application. So at the European level, well, I'm going to talk from our point of view. We are being benefited by this legislation because of these bunches that we are putting. Is thank you to the allowances that we are receiving, and these allowances come from the CO2 credits sold. So if not, we should do an investment of 300,000 euros, and this would be not so rapid creation of buses. And we have done an agreement with another company in order to sell these credits with all these agricultural practices in the crop area. But we do not know for the moment how much we are going to be paid. But I agree with this legislation. Maybe we have any question from the floor? If you do not have, I do. I do have some questions prepared. Okay, so I'll do it. So I was very interested about soil microbiome. Could you explain a bit more what is the research that is being done? I would love, but I am not an expert. I can give you some topics. We do not have time for that, so okay. Well, a figure that really surprised me some time ago is that we all know that plants fix carbon, and is that how they grow? So I was surprised knowing that a fourth of this carbon goes to the soil. It is interchanged with all the bacteria in the soil. There's a spectacular activity between plants and soil. So it is being researched what are the services that the microbiome in the soil gives to the plants and vice versa in order to exploit it. I've been surprised by knowing how many groups that are working on soil research at the THESIC and maybe in other organizations a big amount of people that are studying this, how the soil works and how it helps for the nutrients. It is a field that is still at the beginning, but there's a lot of hope in the progress field. Yeah, we are totally aligned in this. Is there any question at the floor? Okay, Margarita. You introduce yourself and you tell your company. Well, the question, yeah, please introduce yourself. Margarita Sanchez from Yara. This is for Alfonso. They asked you before which innovations are you implementing, and you have talked about physical products, but not about digital products. How do you think that digital products could help at your farm, and how do you see it in the future for regenerative agriculture? Well, from a week ago, we are using an application. We're including all our information about our land in order to have everything better organized, to know what happens in each area of the farm. I think it's an obligation. So this leaves us with the homework done. And apart from that, we have been in the digital field for the moment. So a GPS for the cows when they go out of the farm, and also UAVs in order to see where there are more water in the farm. And I think it's more or less everything. And for the future, well, I would like to work with UAVs and cameras that can tell you the hydric stress or the plagues, the problems, that kind of problems, that great machinery that tells you how is the soil. So I would like to implement each time more of that solutions, but we have still many things to do. So digital field is not an issue very common for me, but I would like to introduce people that are experts on that. Yeah, I would like to add something. I think that with the national change that we are having, the digital tools are going to be implemented and get more space. So we are looking the possibilities, for example, with artificial intelligence to interpret data, to give more advice, machinery that can assess according to climate, in order to see the impact of the agricultural practices in the population. So we could see if that helps or not. So I think it has each time a more important role at the farms, and it will help a lot. Yeah, I want to say something, but of course when there's connectivity everywhere, because in some areas we do not have even connectivity for mobile phones. Yeah, there's a thing that I forgot to say, that regarding commercialization, it helps us a lot, and we are beginning with commercializing almonds that selling directly to the consumers. we send the kilos of almonds, and that's totally digital. We are already doing that from since last year. I don't know if is there any other question? Sorry, I don't see you. So the last question. Okay, you want to add something?
Thank you very much for the conference here and the very interesting issues. My question is, so the cultivation of land is as old as the settlement of humans, but the expectations of society to land changed a lot. Was it 100, 150 years ago? The main expectations was food and firewood and hunting for game. Nowadays, society expect from cultivated land food, cheap and healthy food, raw materials, especially wood, but just eucalyptus, pine, and spruce. They expect recreation. They expect protection against natural hazards like floods, avalanches, land and forest fires. And they expect biodiversity. And the newest expectation of society to cultivated land is the sequestration and fixing of carbon. And we all agree on the 3 dimensions of sustainability. It is an ecological dimension, we have the social aspect, and we also have the economic aspect. And my question to the forum is, what support can regenerative agriculture, biodiversity, and all these issues, what support can they bring to the economic aspect of sustainability for the farmer and the landowner?
Thank you. ¿Quién responde?
Yo, que nos paguen por servicios ecosistémicos y biodiversidad generada.
Iba a decir algo.
Yeah, I was going to say something. Okay. There are members of European Parliament that are encouraging in order to have an additional fund in order, because the ecosystems are 25% less than before, and regarding the 2027, we will see. But addressing in that direction, we need to go from the 30% from the wood crops to cereals to mass adoption, or instead we will not have the impact that we are talking about. So we need to have the policies and the allowances in order for that to work. Thank you. It's a very good question. For me, is the key that is going to promote the speed in this transition. So the transition that comes to the regenerative agriculture and also the energy transition, and they all are hand by hand. We are talking about green transition, green manure. So that they have less emissions for the environment, but that has a cost. And not only the farmer can support that. We need to be gathered from the private and public sector because private sector needs to absorb that cost from the production, from the food company, and till the consumer. For example, we have a clear example at Sweden. You may know the cooperative. It is a new business model that they found in their consumers' network a niche that can pay a bit more for the bread, but also regarding the public sector. For example, IRA in the United States, part of these incentives include $20,000 million regarding regenerative practices. It shouldn't only be the farmer that supports this. So Ernesto, please. It is a very good question. Before we asked less to the soil because we didn't know all the collateral effects, and now that we know them, we want to control them, and no one to say how we pay for them. But I would like to add, as we are at my home, that sometimes I think about the farmers with so many topics and different issues, so many labels that they really do not know their value. So I would like to call for the decision making regarding the science. So all these practices that we have talked about need to be supported by research and data in order to offer consumers and producers products that are really reliable. So thank you all. Your presence here and all that we have talked about. We are getting to the final part. We still have some time, but now are going to come here the advisor. So the senior advisor of strategy partnerships at the Forum for the Future of Agriculture, Mark T. Terrington, and the head of policy and program of the European Regional Office, EUCN, Alberto Arroyo, and they're going to chat about everything we have talked about this morning. Thank you all.